Hi, everyone. I'm Pablo Jose Sanchez. I'm the coordinator of NetSlack platform. NetSlack. It's the first time I am presenting a webinar. It's truly a pleasure to be able to talk to you. This is quite a unique time. Most of the population is in quarantine or in lockdown, and really we need to understand that the discussion on climate change is much broader than the massive use of renewable energies. As we will see ahead in presentations of José Luis Samaniego, Director of Sustainable Development and Human Settlements of CEPAL, and Eduardo Apacasi, he's a professor of Argentina and the author of one of the interesting proposals. So we need to have commitment of their countries, and therefore we need to move forward on discussions about issues that are somewhat difficult, like carbon sequestration or modification, and that calls for technical information and for each one of us to adopt our own position. NetSlack, as you know, it is a collaborative and action platform promoted by countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, trying to support the implementation of long-term strategies and LDCs with the resilient development view, and in collaboration with one of our members of the council, ECLAC, that seeks to contribute to evaluate the progress in public policies, instruments, and institutions addressed to have a more inclusive and less footprint. We have joined with C2G, Carnegie Council for Ethics in International Affairs, seeking to catalyze a governance framework and elimination at large scale. It's important to say that C2G is impartial insofar as research, evidence, and potential use of emerging technologies. These are decisions that society needs to take. C2G has a mission in time. Its mission will be achieved once governments and society in general assume their governance in emerging technologies. This is the first webinar in a project between C2G, NetSlack, and ECLAC, trying to strengthen climate in Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to tell you what's the mechanics. First, you need to know the agenda of this webinar in general terms. We have a presentation of José Luis Samaniego from ECLAC, then Eduardo Fracassi from Climate Interactive, and then we have Ale Castan in C3G. And so far as methodology, we want this to be highly participative, based on questions that Alia will present to all of you. And you will see throughout the presentation, each one can answer, and with that we can have your feedback. Questions you may have will be sent in writing. I will be receiving them, and we will answer them to the extent that they're grouped as such.
For our English-speaking audience, we will have translation. On the bottom right of your screen, you'll find a couple of flags with the translation.
You will find translation. You can click on the language you want, English or Spanish.
As the conversation moves forward. De nuevo, esperamos
So once again, we hope that this webinar will meet your expectation. Let's like, here we are available. All of you are welcome. Thanks everyone, especially our partners, C2G and CEPAL, for having trusted us in this work, and hopefully this will be agreeable to you. So without further ado, Jose Luis, please go ahead. We will begin your presentation. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Let's Lack, for the invitation. For us, it is a pleasure, and we are an organic part of Let's Lack. And before beginning the presentation, C2G will raise a few questions. So throughout the webinar, you may answer them and we can share with you the results. Please, Alia, go ahead. There you have the question. Is your country working in the preparation of the update of your NDC? National contribution? Is your country working on updating? Which sectors do you consider have the greatest potential for compliance with the NDC of your country? So we will be showing the results throughout this webinar. So let us begin then with the presentation. I would like to speak about the challenges for the compliance of the Paris Accord, Paris Agreement. So we have an unprecedented situation in the world and of course in the region with crises that are overlapping. And the three crises that you can identify are difficult to face because they call for an alignment of measures that can link the short with medium and long terms. It is an exercise that we are not used to from governments, of course. It's difficult to perceive because there are different time horizons. The health crisis is short term. We need to be through it right away. It has already unleashed a recession that began with consumption problems due to lockdowns, and there will be a problem in supply and productive chain. It will not be solved in 1 year. Surely there will be some permanent sequela. And regarding that, we have the environmental crisis that continues to accumulate. We have many of the thresholds, environmental thresholds of the planet that have been exceeded. For example, nitrogen, phosphorus, loss of diversity, and of course, greenhouse gas emissions, and the idea of 1.5 or 2 degrees centigrade, which is what the Paris Agreement is trying to control. So align or not align. And there's a potential conflict between short-term urgencies, and as we are used to focus in recovery or anti-cyclical programs and necessary alignment for long-term. So if there is a potential conflict or alignment, and it will depend on decisions that adopt in their economic recovery plans. It may be a green economic recovery or non-green. It can help us or doom us to persist in hydrocarbon. A second important factor is climate change exacerbates vulnerabilities, socioeconomic vulnerabilities of the pandemic. And the climate change, it is expressed worse in those that have less resources and those that have no access to social protection policies, welfare states, very much weakened by a chronic lack of investment in order to buy the health insurance that was necessary. the insurance of citizen income that was necessary in order to face pandemic and economic subsequent crisis. And we are making the same mistake in order to face the climate crisis. We are not investing in the insurance that would allow us to face climate change in a better manner. For the time being, the climate problem is aligned with the development style. And to re-guide that development style, we need a deliberate action, well directed, of cross-sectional action with the support of all sectors, national, local governments, social players, in a framework of discussion, transparent discussion to generate necessary consensus. And finally, in these considerations, we believe that climate action can and should be the key pathway for a post-pandemic green recovery that will support those sectors like renewables, public transportation, basic health and water, sanitation, infrastructure, construction materials, economy of care, a recovery of ecosystem services. And so these sectors, at the same time, we disencourage those that are sectors that are carbon intensive. So we need to align objectives and create favorable conditions. It's not enough one sector, nor one policy, nor one single actor. It is an effort of the whole society. Obstacles for the compliance of the Paris Agreement. First, global efforts are not enough. You know, this graph, and this is the added result of the different commitments, national commitments with gaps, important gaps. 29 gigatons and up to 32 gigatons in order to reach the 1.5 degrees centigrade threshold in 2030. There are less gaps, 12 or 15, if commitments are conditional or non, to reach the 2 degrees centigrade. What does the Paris Agreement say? That we need to regularly adjust this. So the sum of global efforts will allow us to reach or not go beyond the threshold of danger in this climate security or non-security. That we see these measures with national efforts doesn't mean that only national efforts suffice. You need a lot of international cooperation in order to socialize costs and a lot of cooperation. Obstacle number 2, inside countries. Mitigation and adaptation efforts still do not reach out to all sectors, nor the roads of sectors are clear, and territory. So, in DCs, you can see on this map how there are gaps or in some countries regarding what they've reported to the Commission and would be of interest. We have this aligned in this way so that you can see where we have missing issues. One important case, is that of waste that have methane. Some industries, some forests, infrastructure, where apparently you don't have the NDCs. A lot of work to do inside each one of the countries. Same thing as to adaptation. We are missing sectors. I call your attention to the issue of the impact on coastlines, where lots of actions are missing. Here I have it. And this is a problem that is shared by the whole region. And it's not one of merely of deficit of development quality. It is induced by climate change. A third obstacle, the sum of our policies or the alignment of incentives do not have the annual decarbonization rate in economies that we need in order to meet the NDC. Here you have the overview for Latin America, where you can see between 1990 and 2014, blue column, we've had a historical decarbonization annual rate of minus 2.4%. From here to 2030, hopefully that decarbonization rate will decrease because forests, plantations will have yielded capture potential, and we will have a minus 2% rate between now and 2030. In order to meet the NDCs, unconditional, that committed by country, we would have to increase in 8% in the 0.8 in order to comply with the NDCs. And in 1.6 points, additional points, if countries recognize that are receiving technological support or financial support to comply with the condition gaps. So we are not going at the appropriate rate or pace. It's a major obstacle at the aggregate level and sectoral level. Let us see energy here. If we wanted to comply with the NDC, we would need to go at minus 1.2 a year as to decarbonization in the energy sector. And we are lagging we are going at 0.3% a year. Same thing in agriculture, minus 1.4. And we should be 1 percentage point faster. Same thing happens in industrial sector, where there is a carbonization rate of 1.6%, and we should be going at less than half of the rate of carbonization. And in the case of waste, we should be decarbonizing. So we have national gaps and sectoral gaps that we could identify within the framework of better wage, better measures or sectoral practices. And here, I would like to give you a couple of examples of one of the last. This is the last national contribution that is updated, and that is of Chile, has just been presented in March of this year, where you have an important change in the narrative, in the approach, and a change in the role of carbon capture or heat or HAP. Here you see the new model of the carbon neutrality model of Chile, where they will reduce 5 megatons between now and 2030. And it is a clearer goal than those referred to relative reductions or scenarios. In this case, it's an absolute reduction regarding emissions you have today, and from here to 2030. How each one of the sectors will contribute: industry, a new energy source, hydrogen, promising, electromobility, construction, withdrawal of electric power plants of some carbon or coal, and some energy efficiency, and these forms are more benign, more inclusive, and probably more cost-effective to reduce emissions. Second good example, that's also from the carbon neutrality mission of Chile, is that there is a change in the narrative where opportunities of investment are emphasized, investments that are cost-effective, cheap, and at the same time reducing many, many emissions. Here, you have the reduction potential of each one of the alternatives. Here, this one, it's electric heating in homes, different from fire or uh, this is a big line of emission reduction with an absolute savings regarding the cost for society to implement this type of solutions, where you can reduce practically $100 per ton that has been reduced. So on the left, on the zero, you have all the modalities that represent a savings for society. And here on top of zero, you have those that have a cost for society. So there's a change in narrative. You leave the idea that there is a net cost involved. It's not like that. It could be a tremendous saving for society. I end with a few messages saying that to support decarbonization requires to be supported in key sectors: renewables, public transportation, nature-based solutions, generating more employment and generating a smaller carbon footprint or environmental footprint. Policies need to be consistent so that relative there is a change in relative yields, and with different objectives, where you have social, environmental regulations, fiscal policies, compensations, all of these within a transparent social discussion as raised by the Escazú Agreement. And then finally, reinforce the role of SDGs and NDCs as compasses for development. These are clear guides that involve goals that have been globally agreed, and those I would say that with this I would end my presentation and open to questions, and then I would give the floor to my colleague. Thank you, Jose Luis. I sent a question about language, please. Can you project the question about language while Jose Luis, my colleagues, can answer? There are 3 questions I have received for your presentation, and these are: 1, Anna, what recommendations do you give to countries to design and construct objectives, indicators for NDC with a gender approach for adaptation and mitigation? Would you like to hear them all, or would you go one by one answering? Yes, give them. Yes, raise them all. The second one would be Diane Sandy. Several countries of Latin America and the Caribbean are already developing strategies in bioeconomy, like Costa Rica. So the question is, public policies, political incidences should be aligned to these strategies, and how are they linked or with the NDCs? Maria del Valle says, what awareness strategies for decision makers? Because adopting mitigation measures is not a cost, but rather a savings. I don't understand very much the language, but the truth is, if you can explain us a bit better. But if you want, Jose Luis, if you want to answer. The first one is the most difficult one. Among development problems, or the impact of poor policies or policies with deficits, has a very differentiated effect, and creating inequality. Uh, these bad decisions for development affect more the poor than the rich. But among the vulnerable categories, women are always more affected. So, to have a policy with a gender sensitivity means that national statistics need to report the impacts in poverty, in substance living livelihood, and so that we can see the impact on women. There are other problems in Latin America that take away from women possibilities of better overcoming crises caused by extreme disasters that are also because either they have limited access to property or because you require authorizations or from husband or parents or something. I mean, all those things should be corrected, should be fixed so that women and men have the same rights. And at the same time, mitigation, adaptation, and social protection policies be especially gender sensitive because women are especially vulnerable. For example, loss of livelihood. Many women are heads of breadwinners, that is, and you need to recognize that special vulnerability. Insofar as our economy, it is a route to follow for Latin America, the nature-based solutions and refining resources in economies based on biodiversity is very powerful. Remember that Latin America is between Cancer and Capricorn tropics with the greatest diversity. And so if we can obtain resins, fibers, enzymes, nutraceuticals, all the options provided by biodiversity, and at the same time, restoration of ecosystems, I think that is the route to follow. Now, how are policies aligned with those concerns? That is a more complicated question. Why? Because restoration of ecosystems, usually it is a positive externality for economy. It is a good that is not adequately compensated for in economy. Let's think of mangroves restoration that applies almost to all countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, would generate coastline protection, but company by company, it's very difficult that they are willing to pay. So you need to find a social institutional mechanism through which you can pay back the environmental service and that cost be distributed among the beneficiaries of the environmental service. Company by company, voluntarily, it's difficult to achieve. So you need to have a state policy with social awareness so as to resolve the coordination problem. There's a lot to move forward on policies in order to enable large-scale solutions. Another way to do it would be in an NDC to force sectors to have climate goals that had to compensate, and one way be those services that are nature based, but you need institutional drives for viability of the economy, and policies should interact with that are nature based. How to take this narrative change to decision makers? You need to do it in all possible discussions. Ministers of economy with ministers of finance, public works, and need to interact. And the narrative needs to consider the well-being opportunities offered by climate option. There's another question in the chat. Green bonds continue to be an opportunity. Yes, indeed. They replace partly the bank actions as lenders of resources and transfer that function directly to investors in security markets. what we've seen in the regular reports we do in EGLAC is that even with the smaller interest rates and consider the excess liquidity of international markets, green bonds are a very attractive solution if you have the assurance that resources collected with bond issuance will go to sustainable solutions. So you need to have absolute understanding of definitions of what is green. There are discrepancies. For example, the use of methane, still, it is argued as methane as it is a transition solution and has been challenged from many angles.
José Luis, hay varias preguntas.
There are several questions.
No tenemos mucho
We don't
tiempo,
have
pero
time,
quiero
but all of them I'd like to summarize it in
digamos que la
one.
mayoría de lo que está buscando es tratar de entender cómo se puede pasar
Everybody
a
tries
la
to
teoría
understand
como
how
a la
can you move
práctica
from theory to practice.
desde diferentes perspectivas. Es decir, hay algunas preguntas
Some
que
questions
quieren
say
entender cómo se
or
puede
want
hacer
to
un buen
understand a better interrelation between mitigation and adaptation in terms of policy development. Others seek to understand how can you have a better link between climate policies and private sector. Others asking about how can you develop concrete policies in terms of emission reductions. And there is an interesting one that is raised in English on how or what are the consequences that can be derived from this juncture of COVID insofar as emission reduction or restoration, environmental restoration. I apologize, everyone. They are all very interesting questions, but we need to move on to the following one. So, Jose Luis, very briefly, I don't know if you have one final comment. Yes, very briefly. To go from theory to practice, here I have a bias. When you go to the supermarket, what do you buy? How do you buy what's best for you? It's a combination of prices and quality. Same thing in economy. You need to be clear what are the advantages and disadvantages of your development options. If you know what are the economic, social, environmental footprints and the alignment it has with the 2030 agenda, one decision versus another, you can campaign in pro of those that are better for society. If I say that fossil energies generate less employment than renewables, are more expensive than renewables, employ less people than the renewables, produce more imports than renewables. The only reason why you're investing in fossil energies is either because you favor a lobby or because you have too much invested capital in order to drop those investments and go favor the ones that you should. So it's to really clarify the consequences of one decision versus another. That is the way to go from theory to practice, and that incentives be aligned so that the decisions you want be favored. Consequences of COVID short term, they generate an emergency sense that harms long-term reflection. So to leave the recession you have now, you will go to the more well-known options instead of really truly weighing those that are best for you in the long term or medium. So you should have a social, open discussion on greener recovery. I give you an example. COVID, well, you distrust society's public transportation because you cannot keep social distancing. And also recession has cheapened fossil fuel and banks need to earn money. So you have incentives, but in fact, cities should be adopting decisions, avoiding that to be the prevalent solution, because in 1 year time, you will have a collapse. in the congestion and vehicle congestion and with environmental consequences. So you should be adopting a medium-term solution, favoring quality public
Muchas gracias, José
transportation.
Luis. Les recuerdo
Fine,
también
thank
que si
you.
hay alguna pregunta que ustedes quieran hacer más adelante, les vamos a dejar un correo de contacto
There
para que
will
nos
be
puedan
an
escribir
email
y
for you to
nosotros
raise the
posteriormente
questions.
podemos contestarla por ahí.
And
Entonces,
now,
José Luis, muchísimas gracias
thank you
por tu
for
presencia.
your
Voy
presence,
a
Jose Luis.
darle
Now
la
I would
palabra
like
a Eduardo Fracassi
to
para
give
que
the floor
pueda
to Eduardo
trabajar
Fracassi.
como tal también en el modelo. De nuevo, Eduardo, muchísimas gracias a José Luis por
Thank
su
you, Jose
presencia
Luis, for your
y Eduardo,
presentation. Now, Eduardo, welcome.
Muchas gracias, gracias José Luis, gracias Eduardo
Thank you.
por la posibilidad de participar de este encuentro. Para mí es
Thank you for the possibility of doing this. I'm ambassador of Climate Interactive since 2016. I'm one of the oldest ones, and we've been working with these tools since 2013. What I will suggest now is to play with the simulator and roads. And with this, all of us can experiment or try how would energy transformation be in the coming years. This is very sensitive. You have the simulator in your link. Here on the left side, upper left, you have the energy matrix from the year 2000 to 2100. So you have coal in brown, red is oil, blue natural gas, green energies in green, bioenergy in violet, and light blue is nuclear energy and a possible new technological solution in orange. On the right side, you have a temperature according to the business as usual scenario. The problem we have is that for 2040, we would be out of the 2 degrees Paris Agreement. In 20 years, I mean, we need to do the necessary changes for this trajectory to remain within the 2 degrees, or ideally 1.5. And here, you have the different possible interventions to solve the climate crisis. If you move any of these knobs, for example, change the population growth rate, you will see that the average final temperature for 2100 will go down 2/10 from 4.1 to 3.9. Let us take 5 minutes for each one of you to evaluate which ones of these interventions you would do first. So I would like to ask Alia to raise the question that we have already prepared. What is it that you would do firstly? Which ones of these interventions would you do firstly in the first place? Thank you. Take 5 minutes and we play with the simulator. And you answer the question, please.
¿Alguna consulta que tengan la pueden escribir en el chat?
Any question you may have, please write it on the chat.
José me las va a ir
And Eduardo will convey them to me and I will answer them.
Recuerden, es en la sección de Q&A más que en el chat.
That will be in the Q&A section.
Muchas gracias. Si hay alguna consulta, no pueden elegir varias. Tienen que elegir
You need to choose only one, not several, 1 out of 10. What do you recommend doing firstly, in the first place? What intervention would have the highest impact? There is one question that has been repeated, and that is the weight of environmental services in emission reduction.
Adelante. Adelante, por favor.
Please go ahead, I cannot hear.
Adelante porque no te escucho.
I cannot hear.
Adelante, por favor. No escucho la pregunta.
I cannot hear the question. The weight of ecosystem services in emission reduction. Ecosystemic services. I don't know them like that. I have only these categories there. The ecosystems as such, I don't know them. What do you mean with that? There are several ecosystem services. Reforestation, afforestation. I'd like to ask Juan Carlos, please elaborate, because environmental services should have greater weight in Latin American economies. Please elaborate. There are countries like Guyana that have found oil fields very recently, and that is a growth possibility. And the question is, what plans are there globally in order to demotivate oil-based growth for that type of countries that have a lot of poverty and have very little growth options? That is the question. I don't understand, Edgar Lopez. What do you mean? We have a question on oil, the ecosystem services. I thank you, José Antonio. Excellent question.
La verdad es que la viabilidad del petróleo hoy está
the feasibility of oil is challenged. Countries like Argentina have had to subsidize oil. Base price was set higher than market one, because a week ago we had future negative prices because of an excess supply. I doubt that oil be an option to generate wealth in the next 10 to 20 years. I wouldn't invest in oil. For example, the cost of oil for countries like Saudi Arabia, they have very important wells. It's only $5 the barrel. You invest to generate more oil, and you can end putting money from your pocket, because as Jose Luis said, the oil prices have declined of energy, the leverage cost of energy of renewable energies is lower than conventional energies. So if you invest in oil today, surely you will be wasting money. I wouldn't do it. Not because of an environmental reason. I wouldn't do it because very likely the country will lose money investing in oil. That is today's reality. Now, if Guyana's government is willing to subsidize oil, well, it's an internal domestic policy issue of the country. I have no reference, no background on that. Thank you for the question. Now, please, I'd like to know, have you answered the questions? I would like to know. It's to tell you that in the same questions, you had the three that you raised. What's the first priority, the second priority, and the third priority? So now you have the answer. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to those that answered. Hopefully, I mean, it's good that you've been able to use the simulator. This simulator is, IPCC has much more sophisticated tools like the YUMS assessment models. But with this, you can understand what's the true pathway in order to solve the climate crisis. So, I'll do what you're proposing. The brown would be the most important one, to apply energy efficiency in transportation and infrastructure. In the simulator, I will put an increase of energy efficiency. That's quite significant. Highly increased. Let us see the impact on the energy matrix, energy grid. You can click on this button and see how it changes. Repeat it 3 times, and so we go down 0.4 of a degree. And for the end of century, the most important energy source is coal, followed by oil and natural gas. Now, temperature went down half a degree, and that's quite significant. So it is an interesting measure, energy efficiency. Now, let us put energy efficiency in transportation, and we have 2 more tenths of an impact. Look how world energy grid changes. And the prevalent energy at the end of 2100 will be coal, and then secondly, oil. Thirdly, natural gas and renewable energies in the third place. You can see quite clearly in the simulator with the following graphs. There, you have them all. You have them in the menu. Here you have the most important ones. For example, gross world product, energy demand, cost of energy. What are the most expensive energy? For example, for 2100, the most expensive is oil, second bioenergy, thirdly would be which one? This one. It would be renewable energies. And then natural gas and coal. That would be the cheapest one, then gas, and then renewables. Primary energy demand. Here you have the pie chart. Here we are not getting carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The reduction is known as negative emissions, the CO2 removals, and it's a leverage point that could be of great importance. Net emissions of CO2, emissions and removals, temperature, and the rise in sea level. This is like a synoptic table. Another interesting view is the Kaya graph. You see it here. A Kaya equation says that the amount of people living in the planet as a GDP, per capita GDP, with the energy intensity of each dollar earned by a person, carbon intensity of energy, multiplying these four numbers, we can have CO2 annual emissions from greenhouse emission, gas emission energy. Look, emissions go down, but not sufficiently. And the only thing we did was energy efficiency. So let us see the answers. Please, I want to see them again. What are your answers? Alia, please, could you share the responses, the answers, so we see the second option? Thank you. Here, there was a small group mentioning the carbon pricing, reforestation. Let us go to the second one. The second option, priority, according to our group, is reforestation and forest conservation. Reforestation, forest conservation. So here on the simulator, you can put it. What you can do is an important effort to prevent deforestation, and we go down 1/10 of a degree. I don't know if everybody had seen that preventing deforestation has less impact, comparatively speaking, and to add more value, we will build new forests, plant new forests, and we go 1/10 of a degree less. So energy efficiency has more impact than policies preventing deforestation and planting new forests. NASA has proven that India and China have planted many more forests. That was new. I think it was last year, yes. But the impact of deforestation and afforestation is less than energy efficiency. Let us go, Alia, to the questions to show their third one. We have reforestation again. After that, you have promotion of renewable energies and taxes on fossil energies. What happens with the taxes? Let us say a very high tax, carbon tax, and we will see the graphs. Let us repeat this intervention and see what happens if we put a tax on carbon. It decreases 2/10 of a degree. Remember that 3 degrees means desertification of Central America,
casi deforestación de América
the
Central
deforestation of Central America
de América del Sur.
and the north of South America.
Países de
We are
Sudamérica
countries
Central.
of South America and Central America.
Entonces, esto es muy
And so
serio,
this
lo que
is
está
very
pasando.
serious what is happening. It's
Pongo
not a
un
minor
impuesto
issue.
a
And let us
los
put a tax on oil.
También importante, tenemos una décima
Also
de grado
important, we have
terpeno
1/10
y al gas
of
natural.
a degree less
Con lo cual llegamos a 3 grados
and natural
y
gas.
seguimos
With
manteniendo el
this, we
problema.
are in 3 degrees and we
Mi
continue with the
pregunta,
problem. So my question,
yo lo que propongo, Alía, es que hagamos lo siguiente.
Alia, what I'm
Nos
suggesting
tomamos
is that
5
to
minutos
take
más,
5 more minutes
5 minutos más y exploremos mejor el simulador
and let
y luego
us
de esos 5 minutos
explore the
hacemos la
simulator.
pregunta.
And after 5 minutes, let us
Entonces,
raise the question again.
si quieres, Alía, yo te comparto este link
I
para
can
que
share
todos
this
tengan
link, Alia,
el mismo comienzo,
so
digamos,
that
¿no?
everyone will have the same beginning.
El chat está. Sería New Share. A ver, Page Share, Annotate. ¿Me pueden decir cómo puedo postear el link
en el chat al lado de participantes está el chat?
In the chat, right beside participants, you have the chat.
¿Este Q&A?
No.
You have the Q&A right beside participants.
Abajo, al lado de participants, aparece share screen. Entre participantes y share screen está chat.
You have chat between participants and share screen.
Si ustedes hacen clic en este link,
If you click there, those that have the simulator open will see exactly what I have on the screen. You can share among yourselves solutions just copying the link. You open the link, and you can work there on different scenarios. Here on top, it says share your screen. You can share it in Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, by mail, or copy the link on this scenario. I'll be using this technology.
Creo que sé qué es lo que pasa porque tú no ves. Es que como tú tienes en este momento el simulador abierto, no está en la llamada de Zoom, pero ya Alia pudo poner el link.
Alia was able to put the link.
Mientras tanto, Eduardo, hay unas preguntas que te están haciendo por el chat.
There are some questions in the chat. I think it's relevant to raise them.
Voy a ir un poco en desorden, les pido disculpas a todos por esto, pero me preguntan acá
They ask, can other sectors be included, like agriculture, waste, or can you have individual simulations? Well, agriculture, look, it's here. Land and industry emissions, you have it there. Land, I'm here underscoring this, underlining in light blue. And if I click on the 3 points you have, then you can move the cursor in a general way. If you move it this way or that way, I leave it here. You can use a detail setting, clicking here. So waste, agricultural waste emissions, methanes, or nitrogen oxide, you can move it with this. And you have industry and energy emissions, fluorinated gases that are used in industrial refrigeration, or methane and nitrogen oxides that can be sold from an energy generation process, and other greenhouse gases. Everything is included there. Yes, you can see it. Other greenhouse gases. You can set the start of year or
digamos, de vuelta,
start of policy year.
contempladas
There is where
el
you
tema
have
de las emisiones de la agricultura.
the agriculture
¿Sí? En
emissions
solapita de acá.
on this tab here on the right side.
Eso.
No one has suggested that so far. Other question? Yes, go ahead.
Hay un par de preguntas que están relacionadas con las anteriores y es
There are
si hay
some
una
questions
desagregación
that
para
are
poderlo
aggregated with the
nivel
previous
regional
one.
y
Can you
nivel
have
local.
this aggregation to
Y
see
otra
this
pregunta que me toca
regionally? And there is
hacer
another
Inés
question
Rivadeneira, porque
by
creo que
Inés
he leído
Rivadeneira.
anteriormente, pero no sabría cómo plantearla en términos de respuesta, y es si la simulación puede
If
hacer
simulation
análisis de brecha de
can
género.
do gender gap analysis.
Digamos, el modelo de la simulación
The simulation
contempla
model
solamente el mundo en su
contemplates
globalidad.
only the whole world, the planet
El
as a
parámetro
whole.
que utiliza Climate Interactive es Think Global, Act Local.
Think global, act local.
Para todo el
Let
mundo,
us think things for the whole world
actuemos en forma local según lo que se puede.
and let us act
Creí ver
locally to the extent possible.
qué zonas, si se está dividido por
Let
zonas.
us see how it is divided by zones. No, the answer is no. No, it's not divided by. It is a simple model that can be seen in a navigator where you can think of global scenarios to solve the climate crisis. And we are at 3 degrees with a lot of problems. What can we do in addition to this to meet the Paris Agreement? That is that the blue line ends in between 2 and 1.5 degrees. No, with 3 degrees, no, it's not enough. Whatever we did insofar as forestation, preventing deforestation, putting a tax on fossil fuels, generating energy efficient, yes, situation improved, but it's not enough. So you need to look for other options.
Hay una pregunta sobre el significado de eficiencia energética. ¿A qué se refiere?
There is a question, what do you mean energy efficiency in the simulator?
¿Y qué tan fiable es el sistema de cálculo?
How reliable is the calculation method or system? As to reliability of calculation system, this simulator is checked versus YAMS used by IPCC. They are based on interactive assessment models. It's not as simple as this one. This simulator is synthesis of what is predicted by YAMS and can be used in a computer. You can tweet the results or post them in social media. But truly, and it has been verified by a panel of scientists. I was in Rio de Janeiro, invited by YASA and European organization. And in the presentation, I showed this simulator, and you had people doing data verification. There were some people from Germany, Florian Kappmeyer, for example, and other people from YASA. What other questions do you have? There are two questions that are very interesting. One is refers to externalities about renewable fuels. Have you measured positive and negative externalities to determine the use of certain technologies in the model? And there is another one that I think was done anonymously, but it's very interesting. why population control is considered as a variable in the model.
Bueno, el tema de las externalidades está representado básicamente en el precio del carbono,
Externalities is represented in the
opción que
carbon
me
price
sugirió. El precio del carbono tiene distintas
that has different variables. It is the price that can be set $50, $100, $200 the ton. The year that this is that the carbon price is used or applied, you can implement it in a progressive manner. And carbon pricing reflects the externalities of using fossil fuel. It is an important leverage point. And the other question, please? Population control. Why is it one of the variables in the model? Because it is based in the Kaya model. The thing is that population will go from 7-8 billion to 11 billion. So consumption of land resources, of the earth resources, increase. So you need more carbon for human civilization to thrive. That's why it's important. I was in presentations where the main cause of climate change was an increase in human population. There have been countries that have implemented restrictions in population. This is a factor that really influences on environmental problems we have.
Gracias, Eduardo. Les quiero contar que tenemos en este momento 154 participantes.
We have 154 participants, one of the highest ones we've had in this type of event. Your subject and the one C2GS is an interesting topic. So I would like to know what countries are you from? So please, in the chat, please write your countries. There are 3 more questions. We have 20 minutes to conclude. There is one on information. Information, is it enough to implement more exactly this model? The information, do we have sufficient information to manage uncertainties and so therefore make decisions? Well, yes, information allows us to choose priority policies. I would like to stop answering questions and let us move on to Alia, please, to have the 3 questions, clean all results. And from now on, from this scenario of 3 degrees, what are the next 3 measures that each one recommends, please? Alia, these are new results? Are these new? No, these are the previous ones. What were you asking for? To raise the questions again. Put them in 0 and let us ask the questions and everybody answering and we will have 3 possible recommendations. Let us see which ones do you recommend now based on the 3-degree scenario.
Perdón, Eduardo, no, quería hacer una acotación acá. Les agradezco que la sección de preguntas las dejemos para preguntas.
I thank you that the questions, yes, comments only on the chat and questions for the Q&A. Let us all vote and see what are the scenarios.
no alcanza, falta mucho para llegar a los 2 grados. Nos falta
So
más de
far,
3
what
grados.
we've done, it's not enough. I mean, we still need 1 more degree. We need to reduce 1 degree, complete degree. We need to reduce 1 degree still.
Eduardo, si me permites, solo quiero recordarles que pueden volver a votar si lo han hecho en la vuelta anterior. Ahora estamos.
Please, I would like to remind you that once you've used the simulator, let us see your experience. We have only 50% of participants, so we invite everyone, please tell us what policies do you think are priority first, second, and third, and thus we will be able to see what are the changes between the 2 votes.
Excelente. Serían en cuarto, quinto y sexto lugar, ¿no? Porque los primeros 3 ya los hicimos.
Would be 4th, 5th, and 6th places. The first 3, we had them already.
Ahí están los resultados, Eduardo.
There you have the results. Thank you very much.
Vemos que, bueno, de vuelta gana eficiencia
Once
energética.
again, we have energy efficiency. We've done that.
No se puede hacer 2 veces.
You cannot do it twice.
Después sería fomento de las energías renovables. Entonces,
Would
vamos
be
a
promotion of
fomentar las energías
renewable
renovables.
energies. So we
Vamos
will
a
increase
poner
renewable energies.
un fomento muy importante.
We'll promote
La
them.
pregunta que yo les hago
The
es
question I raise is, how is this
¿quién puede
financed?
hacerlo?
Who
Ahí lo que tenemos
puts the money to do
es
it?
para repetir el cambio de si fomentamos las renovables en forma
If we increase
significativa, lo que vamos a
renewables in a
tener
significant manner, we'll have
la matriz energética tiene más
the
energía
energy
renovable
grid to
y
have
la
more
temperatura
renewable
tiene
energies, and
baja
temperature
una décima de grado.
went down 1/10
Ahí
of a
creo que
degree.
todavía
But
estamos
still,
muy
we are
lejos
far from
de
getting
llegar a las 2
to
grados.
the 2
¿Cuál es la
degrees.
segunda
What's the
recomendación?
second recommendation?
Si
Alia,
me
please tell
podrían
us.
compartir nuevamente la pantalla los resultados en la pantalla.
What's this?
Están en tu pantalla, en teoría, pero
What's the second one?
a ver, en segundo lugar está en tercer lugar estamos, ¿verdad? El impuesto a las energías fósiles.
Tax on fossil fuels.
Bueno, sería el precio del carbono.
Carbon
El
price.
precio del carbono
Let us put an important carbon price, 75%.
O prefieren poner algún valor específico acá adentro. Vamos a poner acá.
Let us put it there.
Fíjense,
Look,
si uno le pone un
if
precio
we
al carbono, al consumo,
assign a price to consumption, for example,
carro
if I
nafta,
put gasoline in my car,
el precio de la nafta
the important part is that the naphtha or gasoline price is a tax, and that money can be used. Each nation can use it to finance the renewable ones. And there is an important decrease, almost 5/10 of a degree, half a degree with the carbon pricing. So, carbon price is one of the most recommendable measures in order to reduce climate crisis. We are much closer from 2 degrees. And the advantage of the carbon pricing is that, as it is a political decision, it can be implemented next month. There's no waiting time for the application. Countries like Argentina use the carbon price at least or carbon on fuels for decades, and people live exactly the same. So this is something to think about, and it could have good results. Even I would tell you it's simpler than putting a tax on energies like coal, oil, or natural gas. Thirdly, what do you recommend here in the results? What's the third recommendation, please? Alia?
Una repetida, la primera era eficiencia energética que habíamos visto. Entonces, tal vez ahí lo que te pediría, Eduardo,
What I would ask you, it's repeated energy efficiency. What would happen with technological removal of CO2 to see the impact of this policy? It strikes me the fact that, CO2 removal based on technology has different possibilities. Technological carbon removal. If you want to use this, there is discrimination. For example, Beck's process where bioenergy is generated and then you store carbon. You can set the first year of this policy, the direct air capture. Some companies use oil, had proposed solutions like of storing carbon in empty oil wells or fields, or turn this CO2 into carbonate. Enhanced mineralization start here when it would start. Also, you can sequester carbon in agricultural processes in the soil. In biochar, when it starts, when it ends, biochar start here. All those things can be studied and look at the potential of technological carbon removal. If I use this, we go down, we'll see the changes, an important impact. We went 0.3 of a degree, went down, and still we are there getting to the Paris Agreement. What other measure can be adopted? If someone please suggest it. What other things have we not done? Electric heating in buildings. I'll do that. Yeah. And there we have the 2 degrees. Yes, if we do that. If we electrification of vehicles now, we have 1.9 degrees. And if we reduce beef methane emissions, methane and other gases from beef, and there are papers in Australia, for example, and UK and American universities and Brazil that have the Embrapa Institute in order to apply forest grassland methods. You can possibly reduce methane emissions. Let us see, they are reduced to half, and there you have 1.5 degrees. The Paris Agreement. Obviously, this is a major effort to get to 1.5 degrees. It involves carbon pricing, renewables, energy efficiency, of course, technological carbon removal, reduce methane emissions, gas emissions. Methane captures 28 times more energy than CO2. Any comments? If not, I go to questions. There are different suggestions. There are some on methane reduction. There are several questions of interest for you. Have you used the simulator in order to assess the NDCs. What should happen in COP26? Is access to En-ROADS for free? First, simulator and materials that are in the website of Climate Interactive are totally free. Yes, free of charge. Climate Interactive is an NGO that emerged from MIT. Directors are Bessa Wine and John Sturman and Lou Jones. There are former students or PhD professors from MIT. All of this is free. The most important use was when Professor John Sturman, one of my professors in Sloan MIT in 2005, in business dynamics, that professor had access to U.S. Congress and worked with Democrats and Republican senators doing exactly the same thing you are doing. To see what are the solutions to climate change. I've used it. I've done more than 100 simulations in DC roads and En-ROADS. They are both from Climate Interactive, free of charge material and used by renowned authorities. The second question was?
La segunda es si este simulador se ha usado para valorar las actuales NDCs.
Have you used this simulator to evaluate the present NDCs?
Las ciertas de emisiones basadas en las NDCs actuales.
Climate Interactive publishes or has a tool that compares commitments. Let us see this in tools.
Acá Climate Scoreboard. A ver, se me corrió, me parece, perdón. Topic. A ver, de acá.
Climate Scoreboard.
Esto, fíjense el termómetro.
4.1. Look at the thermometer. 4.1 is doing nothing. With NDCs, the NDCs as they are today, as Jose Luis said, would get to 3.2 degrees. And our goal is 1.5. So you have to do a lot of changes and tools like direct carbon capture needs to be implemented regionally, and policies to reduce methane emissions in agriculture. Countries like mine, Argentina, half of the emissions are because of cattle or beef. Cattle. The CBH implementation is very important. Also, cattle usually grow in between, amidst trees, forests, good grasses, good nutrients. And so, at the same time, you preserve the forest. I don't know if there is any other final question. We have only 3 minutes to close webinar for me. It's very important that C2G can have a place. Before finishing, I would like to thank you, Eduardo, for all your work. I think the tool is excellent. And additionally, we have sent all the participants an email. You can raise any additional questions as well, and materials will be available. I don't know, Eduardo, do you have any other topic there that you would like to close? And if not, we give the floor. Yes, I would like to ask to thank Alia for her trust in our work, and hopefully that we can all start using these tools. So I end sharing, and thank you very much. Thank you once again for this tool. I think it is exceedingly valuable to create awareness about different technologies and impacts therein. Once again, we are open to questions or requirements, and we will answer them. So now, Alia, once again, you are the host of this webinar with the ECLAC colleagues, so you have the floor. Thank you, Eduardo Jose. I just wanted to give you a few topics to think about from C2G. As you said it, what we seek is to promote conversation around governance of technologies. These are two families of technologies. One is of CO2 removal, including nature-based solutions, but also technologies that have to do with solar radiation modification. These are called geoengineering technologies. There are different names. The idea of this first webinar was to give an introduction to this technological carbon removal. It's important that practitioners in the region be knowledgeable and have a deeper knowledge of what is involved in the use of these technologies. We'll see this in greater detail in future webinars. You'll be invited to 3 more. But through this tool, you could realize about the impact you could have in public policies. You've seen that many of us always move on to forestation, reforestation, renewable energies, public policies prioritized in order to reach the Paris Agreement. But there are other types of policies that have important impacts that need to be taken into account. We've seen with the simulator that the carbon tax has a lot of potential, and also the removal of CO2. So that was it, a brief introduction so that you will join in this topic. These technologies have a lot of benefits and problems that could emerge, and it is along these lines that it's important to work on governance. The IPCC in its report included CO2 removal in its scenarios and trajectories, so it is something, it's no turning back. We need to find different solutions, put the cards on the table, and see what are the most acceptable solutions for the international community. And these decisions will be, of course, made by society. We won't just give information and promote the issue of governance. First, I would like to thank Jose Luis, Eduardo, and Eduardo for your interventions. I think it has been an interesting session. The simulator, as Eduardo said, is in the En-ROADS page. You can use it free of access. Access free. Share this tool with other colleagues because it can be used for everyone. And also thank Sepal and ETSLAC for being with us in the coordination of these webinars, and you will be receiving information. There's a survey that will be on the screen once we close the webinar. And we invite you to respond to the survey so as to improve the quality. We have had some technological glitches. We are using Zoom for the first time. It was important to have the opportunity to offer this content in English for our colleagues from the Caribbean. We will see how we can have them join more. It's important that practitioners can take part in these discussions and have a greater knowledge of advantages and disadvantages of these technologies and prepare to have position once these technologies take off. You will receive more information from the next webinars. We'll have one per month. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. We've had a turnout of 150 participants. That's an excellent signal. Hopefully, we'll see you in the next month. Thank you.